Burgess here with Music Marketing TV, and today we're going to be taking a look at FabFilter's Saturn. This guy, it is a multi-band distortion plugin. Let me go ahead and play a small loop in which I make liberal use of Saturn. Here you go. So it's a pretty nice, funky, glitchy loop. It's really fun. And I'm using a couple principles here. So one of them is a principle of automation. I have a bunch of Saturns going on the drums, and I'm automating things on and off. And I'm using stacked Saturns in a couple places. I believe there's these two. And one is to doctor a bass that wasn't quite hitting the way I wanted. And the other is to doctor the main bass, the sound that you're hearing. So let's take a look at that one first. So I've got two Saturns without them on. It sounds like this. Oop, wrong thing. I want this one. So there's bits and pieces here that aren't part of the bass, but I didn't route them to a channel, so they're just coming straight out the master. But we see here quite a dull, well, much more clean sound. Also, significantly less interesting for what I want it to do. So the first thing I did was I tossed a Saturn on. Now this first Saturn actually has a specific job. It is to prepare the sound for the next Saturn. So I'm actually going to show you this one first since I was using this one. And then while I was doing it, I got a tone I like, but I didn't get it all the time. And so I added a second Saturn to sort of try and alter how it gets pushed in. So we see it comes up quite a bit. We get a nice little bit of overdrive on that. And so what we're going to do now is I push it quite a bit harder, trying to push it in that overdrive section, as well as hitting it with another flavor right at the very beginning. Now it does get quite a bit louder. I have not mixed this, and I'm not worrying about levels quite yet. But when I go through, I'd turn everything down and mix it in accordingly. I'm pretty happy, though, with the tone I'm getting. So this second one has some pretty specific, I'm pushing the mids and the highs up quite a bit, which is what gives it that grit that wasn't originally there. And this adds content. Whoops, where's the undo? This adds content here, harmonic content, that this one can go ahead and grab and use. And so that's why this first one is pretty important. If I get rid of it. Now, if I have just the first one, it doesn't hit. I get the tone quite a bit, but I don't get it the way I want it to hit and respond when we get louder. So that's what this one sort of offers for us. And so that is why I went with that one, especially this, like when it goes down. Oh, that's so nice. If we get rid of this one, we don't get that. We don't get it the same way. But when we have them both, there's just the right amount of bite. And I really like that. So in context with everything. So the next thing I'm using this on is on the drums. And there's four of them here. But I'm not using them in the stacked way in quite the same notion. So I'm turning them on and off as we go here. This first one controls bit crushing. So if I just have the drums and the first automation, we see that there's all sorts of like crushing going on. So let's go ahead and turn all the automations on. This first one controls a sort of bit crushing thing. And so I believe it's actually this first one here. No, this is the little spice. This is just a general flavor kind of thing. This one is you see how it has the 8-bit kit, and this is just going to basically make it sound bit crushed. And at the end, this one turns on. So I really enjoyed that. So I was like, oh, I'll automate this on at moments that I think it could be cool. I also use it to augment the hit right here. I thought that was kind of a cool thing to do. And then we have a couple others here that are just sort of flavors that I want to toss in every now and then. And those come on and up respectively. So that's one thing. A lot of the time, I try and find a good preset, tweak it a little bit so maybe it's a bit more extreme, and then I automate it into taste, and they could produce really interesting lines. They admittedly don't work with every genre, of course, but for what I wanted to achieve, it could be a pretty handy tool. And a lot of times when you're mixing small moves like this, like bringing in a little bit of saturation here, but then taking it away later, can help add interest to specific parts without being a complete distraction. So this just makes the drums sort of fit better. I compare it to sort of how a musician will play their dynamics. Like if it was a flute player, maybe not a flute player, dynamics are kind of limited. But if they're like a clarinet player, they could play very dynamically. They're going to add vibrato in specific spots. There's just a certain amount of change that goes on. And especially with parts that are very programmatic, such as this, where they're just very mechanical, having these sorts of things can breathe life into parts that were otherwise dead before. So that's really nice. And there's one other thing I use this for as a main idea. A lot of this is just clever placement of samples. And that is these two basses here. So these are both razor basses. But that first one is the one that needed some help here. So if I take these away, I had that nice sort of a boom. If I go in to, where are you? Bass bit. That was the original sound, and I just wanted to sort of push it into realms unknown. So I hit it with the Saturn, and I got a nice little bite out of it, and I thought, hey, what if I go ahead? Now this actually isn't too crazy of a change, and so I decided to push it a little bit further into the realm of the unknown. And I really liked this setting. I was like, all right. Also, there is a ton in here. So if a preset isn't jamming the way you want, you could of course change the levels. That's going to give very direct results pretty quickly. Mess with the drive. But they have these XY pads. They have a whole bunch of modulation capabilities. But these XY pads are great because you can move them around and very quickly get a feel for what is possible. So we get different flavors. Like, I don't dig that one. This one was kind of cool. Get a little more bite. I think that's my favorite. I liked the middle, of course, as just a nice, compromise. I was like, let's just leave that there. But on some of these, I went in here and messed with the XYs some. Like over here, I was having a field day. Just setting things right where I want. Oftentimes, this can be linked. Like you see, this one's linked to dynamics, input gain. So sometimes this will also alter your levels. And it can be a little deceptive because you would think, oh, I'll grab the level knob. But sometimes this can do more of what you're looking for. So keep an eye out for those. But that's a little bit of some tricks you can do with Saturn. Some ways I like to treat it. Now, these are sort of general tricks, so you can do these with any plugin. Saturn's really great for the emulations it has. The kind of drive it invites is really nice. There's some other plugins out there that also do analog drive, but they often have serious issues with resonance. They bring in the warmth, but they also bring in all this resonance, and it can become quite hazardous. Whereas Saturn does not have this problem, and this is amazingly nice. It's one that's quickly becoming a much more grabbed distortion plugin than others. So I guess I'll play it just one more time, and you can just sort of hear for yourself where Saturn's adding those extra little juicy bits of warmth and nice analogness to it, or a digital analogness to it. And then we'll call it good. If you have any questions about this, let me know. Subscribe and hit the bell icon, and have a blessed day.